For 26 years, two people in the royal family shared the same estate, attended the same family events, and loved the exact same children. Yet they were never allowed to stand in the same room. When Princess Eugenie got married in 2018, the photographer finally herded the family together into the green drawing room. And for the very first time since 1992, Sarah Ferguson and Prince Philip stood side by side in a single photo. Most people think Prince Philip cut her off because of those embarrassing sunbed photos leaked to the papers back in 1992. But the truth behind why he erased Sarah Ferguson for nearly 3 decades is much colder, messier, and far more shocking than the story the press sold you. So what did Sarah Ferguson actually do to earn a freeze-out this total? If you love diving into deep, untold stories like this, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Before Prince Philip cut Sarah Ferguson out of his life forever, he actually adored her. In fact, reports suggest that back in 1985, she was one of his absolute favorite people in the entire royal family. Rewind to the early days, when Sarah Ferguson first walked through palace doors to marry Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. To understand how she caught Prince Philip's eye, you have to look at where she came from. Her father, Major Ronald Ferguson, was the polo manager for Prince Charles and a close acquaintance of Prince Philip himself. But behind the scenes, Sarah Ferguson grew up with serious scars. When she was just 13 years old, her mother, Susan Barrantes, packed her bags and left the family home to run off to Argentina with a handsome polo player named Hector Barrantes. That early abandonment left Sarah Ferguson hungry for affection, desperate to fit in, and eager to prove her worth to anyone in authority. When she crashed into the royal world in the mid-1980s, reunited with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor at Royal Ascot thanks to her close friend Princess Diana, she brought a chaotic, unstoppable energy. She was loud, energetic, and completely unfiltered. Most people who met Prince Philip were terrified to speak around him. They bowed, stuttered, and walked on eggshells, worried that one wrong move would trigger his famously sharp tongue. But Sarah Ferguson refused to flinch. She laughed at his jokes, treated senior royals like old friends, and immediately brought a massive burst of fresh air into a palace built on rigid silence and strict rules. Insiders say Prince Philip found her energy thrilling. But the real reason they clicked went much deeper than her outgoing personality. They shared one passionate niche obsession that Prince Philip guarded like treasure: carriage driving. Prince Philip had practically invented the modern competitive version of carriage driving, writing its rulebooks and spending his weekends being pulled across the countryside by a team of horses. Sarah Ferguson took up the exact same grueling sport right alongside him. They spent hours together out on the Windsor estate grounds, bonding over a hobby nobody else in the family really cared about. When she went on to earn her pilot's license in 1986 and her helicopter license in 1987, Prince Philip was thoroughly impressed. Aviation was a huge passion of his own. For a brief, shining moment, Sarah Ferguson was seen as the great hope, the one person who proved you could be a fun, genuine human being without breaking the royal family. So how did a bond that started this warm turn into 29 years of absolute silence? What could Sarah Ferguson have possibly done to make a man who loved her so much decide she no longer existed? To understand why Prince Philip turned so cold, you have to look at the massive storm brewing right under the surface. A world where duty was sacred and one upcoming scandal was about to tear everything apart. It took just 8 short weeks for a warm family bond to curdle into a cold, unbroken freeze-out that lasted 29 years. To understand why Prince Philip snapped so completely, you have to look at the massive clash between two completely different ways of living. Prince Philip didn't grow up surrounded by luxury or security. Reports show he entered the UK as a penniless, stateless refugee, a baby literally carried to safety in a wooden fruit crate after his family was exiled from Greece. To marry Queen Elizabeth, he had to burn all his bridges. He gave up his naval career, renounced his Greek and Danish titles, changed his surname to Mountbatten, and surrendered his independent future. For over 70 years, he walked 3 paces behind his wife, working more than 22,000 unpaid official events for 0 personal profit. To Prince Philip, the royal family was a sacred ironclad duty. You give up everything for the crown, and you never, ever ask for personal gain in return. Then along came Sarah Ferguson. When her marriage to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor began to strain, with Andrew away at sea as a serving naval officer for up to 11 months a year, loneliness and heavy press scrutiny set in. In early 1992, awkward photographs surfaced showing Sarah Ferguson on holiday with Texan multimillionaire Steve Wyatt. By March 1992, the couple formally announced their separation. At that point, 1992 was already turning into Queen Elizabeth's famous Annus Horribilis, her horrible year. Insiders recall the palace was bleeding on the front pages every day following Andrew Morton's explosive book Diana, Her True Story, which exposed the complete breakdown of Charles and Camilla's relationship. The entire royal family gathered at Balmoral in Scotland that August to ride out the storm, trying to recover from the worst public relations beating in modern history. And that is when the point of no return hit. Just 8 weeks after the Morton book landed, fresh photographs hit international headlines. A paparazzi photographer hiding near a villa in Saint-Tropez caught Sarah Ferguson sunbathing topless alongside her American financial advisor, John Bryan. The most infamous picture showed John Bryan bending over her lounge chair, kissing and sucking her toes. While Sarah Ferguson was sitting at the breakfast table at Balmoral with Queen Elizabeth, King Charles, Princess Anne, and Prince Philip, those exact pictures were splashed across the morning papers for the entire world to see. Prince Philip was utterly devastated by the timing. To a man who gave up his entire life to protect the dignity of the crown, dumping fresh, humiliating scandal onto a burning palace wasn't just a lapse in judgment, it was an unforgivable act of betrayal. To make matters worse, when Sarah Ferguson faced deep financial trouble after the divorce, she started signing commercial deals. She became a paid spokesperson for Weight Watchers in America, published tell-all memoirs, and did paid television interviews. To most people, she was just a divorced mother trying to pay her bills. But to Prince Philip, turning the royal family name into a commercial brand was the ultimate sacrilege. Reports suggest he didn't scream or throw newspapers at breakfast like the tabloids claimed. Instead, Prince Philip made a quiet, surgical final verdict. Sarah Ferguson was permanently erased. From that summer on, he simply stopped seeing her, permanently, intentionally, and without exception. If she entered a room, he walked out. If he was at an event, she stayed home. And what he did next to enforce that absolute ban inside the palace grounds turned into one of the strangest operational systems in royal history. Imagine living on the exact same private estate as your former in-law for over a decade, and having a military team of household staff run precision schedules every single morning just to ensure you never cross paths. That isn't a dramatic line written for television. That was the literal daily reality inside the heavily guarded gates of the Windsor estate. When Sarah Ferguson and Andrew Mountbatten Windsor finalized their high-profile divorce in May 1996, the world assumed she would be cast out of the royal orbit permanently. Instead, they defied royal convention. They declared themselves the happiest divorced couple in the world, maintained a united front for Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, and in 2008, Sarah Ferguson officially moved into Royal Lodge. This wasn't a standard family home. Royal Lodge was a sprawling 30-room Georgian mansion spread over 98 secluded acres in Windsor Great Park. Complete with a private chapel, 7 main bedrooms, a grand saloon, and 8 separate staff cottages, it gave the former couple plenty of space to live separate lives under one roof. But while Andrew and Sarah Ferguson shared afternoon tea every single day, the arrangement created an explosive dynamic just 5 miles down the road at Windsor Castle. Enter Prince Philip. The Duke of Edinburgh was notorious for his ironclad loyalty to the monarchy, and he viewed the series of tabloid leaks, financial missteps, and embarrassing photo scandals surrounding Sarah Ferguson throughout the 1990s as a direct threat to the crown. Once Prince Philip severed ties with someone, the door was locked forever. The logistical nightmare began because Prince Philip spent vast stretches of his retirement residing on the Windsor estate and at nearby Wood Farm. Suddenly, Two family members who adamantly refused to stand in the same room were sharing the exact same private royal sanctuary. Royal correspondence, including veteran insider Richard Kay, revealed that palace security and household staff had to orchestrate an invisible clockwork operation to keep the peace. Every morning, staff cross-referenced calendars and tracked movements in real time. If Sarah Ferguson was driving out of Royal Lodge, staff verified the estate roads were completely clear of Prince Philip's vehicle. If Prince Philip was scheduled to attend an event at Windsor Castle, Sarah Ferguson's visits were timed down to the minute to avoid any chance encounter along the corridors. If Sarah Ferguson drove over to visit Queen Elizabeth for afternoon tea, staff ensured Prince Philip was safely engaged on the far side of the grounds, often carriage driving or meeting with estate managers. If Prince Philip was staying in the castle's private apartments, Sarah Ferguson remained strictly behind the gates of Royal Lodge. What made this Cold War even tenser was the quiet divide it created at the very top of the monarchy. Queen Elizabeth did not share her husband's harsh, unforgiving stance. Reports consistently revealed that the Queen maintained a genuine warmth for Sarah Ferguson, regularly inviting her over for private chats, walking the corgis together and keeping her firmly inside the personal family fold. Prince Philip, however, refused to budge. When royal author and close family friend Giles Brandreth asked Prince Philip directly why he went to such extreme lengths to avoid her, the Duke didn't shout or express theatrical rage. He simply replied with icy clarity that he saw no point in interacting with her ever again. For nearly 30 years, he maintained that total freeze-out with unrelenting discipline. And just when it seemed this silent 30-room Cold War couldn't get any more fragile, an undercover media sting in May 2010 handed Prince Philip the ultimate proof that his total ban was justified all along. If Prince Philip ever needed written, ironclad proof that his cold stance was right all along, May 2010 handed it to him on a silver platter. An undercover investigative reporter named Mazhar Mahmood, famously known as the Fake Sheikh, set a brilliant trap for Sarah Ferguson. Posing as a wealthy international businessman, he met with her in a private luxury suite. He offered her a deal that sounded too good to be true, and on hidden cameras, Sarah Ferguson walked straight into it. She promised to introduce the fake businessman to her ex-husband, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, who was serving at the time as a UK official trade envoy, and then came the price tag. On grainy, hidden camera footage broadcast across the globe, Sarah Ferguson was caught asking for £500,000, taking a $27,000 cash down payment right then and there. The footage exploded across front pages worldwide. It was utterly devastating. To the public, it looked like a senior royal family connection was being auctioned off like a used car. Sarah Ferguson issued an immediate, tearful apology, admitting she was facing staggering personal debts, reports suggest well over £4 million at her worst point, and claimed she was in a moment of desperation. For Prince Philip, there were no excuses. Reports indicate he never said a word about the footage in public, but he didn't need to. The tape proved to every courtier inside the palace that his strict, unbending stance wasn't based on a personal grudge. It was based on protecting the family from a total liability. And the consequences hit Sarah Ferguson faster and harder than anyone expected. 11 months later, in April 2011, the entire world stopped to watch Prince William marry Catherine Middleton at Westminster Abbey. Nearly 2 billion people tuned in. Almost the entire extended royal family filled the pews, including Sarah Ferguson's own daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, making headlines in their famous designer hats. But their mother, she was completely erased from the guest list. While the family gathered inside the Abbey, where she herself had married 25 years earlier, Sarah Ferguson was sitting thousands of miles away in Thailand, watching the ceremony alone on a hotel room television. A month later, she sat down with Oprah Winfrey and openly admitted how crushing the moment was. She confessed that being left out made her feel completely worthless, confirming every dark fear she had about her place in the family. While a wedding guest list passes through many hands, royal insiders knew the icy temperature in the room was set by one man at the top. Prince Philip's clear line had become the policy of the palace, And in April 2011, Sarah Ferguson felt just how freezing that line really was. But the saddest part of this entire 29-year Cold War wasn't the headline scandals or the public snubs. It was the quiet, invisible strain placed on two young princesses caught right in the middle. Imagine growing up in a world where your grandfather adores you, your mother raises you, but the two of them are strictly forbidden from ever breathing the same air. That was the daily emotional wirewalk for Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. By all accounts, Prince Philip loved his granddaughters dearly. Close family friends, including royal biographer Giles Brandreth, confirmed that the door to Prince Philip was always open for Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. He followed their education, attended their milestones, and kept them close to his heart. Yet, every single family gathering came with an invisible, agonizing seating chart. Every Christmas, Easter, and holiday event raised the exact same silent question for two young girls. Could their mother come? Or did she have to stay behind at Royal Lodge so their grandfather would show up? Think about the math a child runs with that. They lived in a reality where warmth and complete banishment sat on the exact same family calendar week after week, year after year. And that is why one single photograph in October 2018 sent absolute shockwaves through the worldwide media. On October 12, 2018, Princess Eugenie married Jack Brooksbank at St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle. Following the ceremony, official photographer Alexei Lubomirsky gathered the core family members inside the green drawing room for the official wedding portraits. And that is where the unthinkable happened. Standing in the exact same frame, just a few feet apart, were Prince Philip and Sarah Ferguson. It was the first time the two had been photographed together in 26 years. Royal commentators erupted. People wondered if the ice had finally melted, if an old feud was finally put to rest after 2 decades of silence. But the reality was much colder. No grand reconciliation happened behind closed doors. Prince Philip, who was 97 years old at the time and largely retired from public life, didn't do it because he forgave Sarah Ferguson. He did it for one person and one person only, his granddaughter, Princess Eugenie. Princess Eugenie desperately wanted both her mother and her beloved grandfather in her official wedding album. So, for a brief few minutes on a Friday afternoon, Prince Philip walked into the room, stood in position, let the camera click, and granted a single exception to a rule he held for 29 years. As soon as the photo shoot wrapped, the shutter closed and the wall went right back up. No dinner invitations were sent, no casual chats were exchanged. The military-style avoidance resumed immediately. It proved just how rigid the freeze-out really was. It took a royal wedding, a favourite granddaughter, and a man nearing his 100th birthday just to yield 5 minutes of coexistence. And when Prince Philip passed away 3 years later, one final mystery surrounding Sarah Ferguson's absence threatened to rewrite the entire story once again. When Prince Philip passed away at the age of 99 on April 9, 2021, the world braced for one last public explosion between two sides of the Windsor estate. Tabloid headlines immediately speculated whether Sarah Ferguson would be banned from the funeral just as she was from the 2011 royal wedding. But when the day arrived on April 17, 2021, her absence wasn't caused by a lingering feud or a cold palace order. Due to strict global health restrictions at the time, only 30 mourners were permitted inside St. George's Chapel. The guest list was cut down strictly to immediate children, grandchildren, and direct blood relatives. Even extended family members were left off the list. In reality, royal reporters revealed that Sarah Ferguson spent the days leading up to the funeral quietly supporting Queen Elizabeth II at Windsor. She accompanied her ex-husband, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, on daily walks through the Windsor estate grounds to comfort the grieving monarch, doing behind closed doors what she could never do while Prince Philip was alive. Looking back across nearly 3 decades, the silent war between Prince Philip and Sarah Ferguson wasn't just a personal feud. It was a battle between two completely opposite royal philosophies. To Prince Philip, the monarchy was a sacred institution that required absolute discipline, total secrecy, and unwavering sacrifice. One mistake could damage the crown for generations. To Sarah Ferguson, the royal world was a human family, messy, emotional, financially complicated, and deeply personal. Prince Philip drew an unyielding line in 1992 and held it until his final breath. He proved that inside the walls of the palace, loyalty is rewarded, but boundary lines are eternal. And while Sarah Ferguson was eventually welcomed back into Queen Elizabeth's private heart, she remained, in the eyes of the Duke of Edinburgh, the ultimate cautionary tale of what happens when you step out of line. If you found this untold royal story fascinating, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel reach more viewers. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another deep dive behind palace doors. What do you think about Prince Philip's 29-year freeze-out? Was he right to protect the crown, or was he far too harsh on Sarah Ferguson? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.